Welcome to Monkey and Frank. My name is Do and my body is Dom, and I want to talk to you today about a few things. And the first thing is, let's start with the first dream I had yesterday. I was with my father-in-law in a car, and he had his friend. They were both in the front seats, and I was in the back seat, and we had a trailer. And as we were driving, he turned into kind of like a dirt road, and the trailer kind of, one of those camper trailers, kind of skid and went into the ditch, and it was stuck there. So we unhooked the trailer from the car, and we drove up a little bit down the street, and we saw that there was a car on our left, and they had a tractor. And so I decided to get out of the car to go ask for help to see if he could grab his tractor and help us out. And as I knocked onto the door, there's a man that opened the door. He was bald. He had really, really short hair, white, but he was pissed. Like, he was so angry. And I asked him for help to go and help us. I told him, my father-in-law, the trailer is in the ditch. Is it possible for you to come and help us out? And his frustration level was over the top. Like just over the top frustrated. And he came to help us, so he answered just frustrated, and then when I asked for help, he was so frustrated that he had to get out and help us, but he didn't have to, right? And I remember the feeling. That was what I want to talk about. I remember the feeling of seeing him angry and not being happy, I was not laughing about it, it was not funny, but I remember being like, holy shit, this guy is pissed, but he's still helping us. So we just followed him. He took his tractor, but the entire time, swearing and just kind of throwing tools around and being just the most frustrated soul person I've ever met in my life. And he goes with his tractor, and we're following him, and then he gets to the trailer part where the trailer is kind of stuck, but then the entire scene kind of changed. The trailer was kind of in a tree, under a branch, and it was all covered, and the guy was pissed because now his tractor wouldn't fit. He had a fork at the front of his tractor. He couldn't fit to get it out. So again, just totally pissed off as he's taking out tools, but he's doing all the work, and he's just helping us fully with his frustration. And my father-in-law was the same thing, was like, holy shit, this guy's pissed off. He doesn't have to help if he doesn't want to. We were kind of left in a state where the frustrated guy was the leader kind of thing, and trying to get us out of the ditch or whatever, and the camper out, but the entire time being pissed. So he grabs a saw, and he starts cutting up the wood, the branch that was kind of in the way, and the branch fell, and then in his frustration was so pissed that he grabbed the trailer with two hands and just boom, just threw it on the street, where it landed super perfectly, kind of attached to the car. And I thought to myself, holy shit, his frustration is so powerful that he was able to move the camper with his strength, with his pure muscle strength. And again, even at the end, we're like, thank you, and he's pissed, gets back into his tractor and leaves. And then I woke up from that dream being okay, I don't get it, because I didn't see my father-in-law yesterday. I didn't deal with anybody that was uber frustrated like that, or tractors, or anything involving trailers. But then as I'm reflecting on it more, and that's why I'm talking to you guys about it, I used to be this type of guy where, and even sometimes I am this guy, I'm just so, now that I'm actually talking about it, sometimes I get so frustrated with life that it explodes on my wife, and I'm just frustrated no matter what she's trying to do, how much she's trying to help, how much she's trying to calm me down and say, it's okay, just, do you need a moment? Go downstairs. And I'm just so frustrated that I can't get out of it, and yet I still help. I still do what needs to be done, but in a complete rage. And seeing this man, seeing it from a third point of view, I mean, I didn't behave like that today, for sure. And I'm wondering if it's something that I kind of separated from me now. Instead of associating this type of anger with me, it's this man, in my dream. it created a de-association. And even as he was frustrated, I remember feeling like okay with it. Like, that's his thing, you know, he's still helping us, but this man is pissed, and I don't know why, and I don't care. But there was almost like a funny about it. Like, holy shit, I've never been somebody so pissed that he can take a trailer with both hands. And it's a, you know, like a camper, pretty big. Like, there's no way that would happen. And when I see those type of things in my dream and I wake up, sometimes I feel disappointed because those are the things that make me realize that I'm in a dream. And then I wake up and I get to lucid dream. And I've been asking Mother for lucid dreaming for a while, and it's my fault, right? I'm the one that's not realizing, like, hey, this is weird, you know, like, what's going on here? But anyways, thank you, Mother, for showing me this dream. Now that I'm talking about it, I'm going back and forth with you. I do feel good today, and this frustration bullshit I feel is under control. Like, not control, I don't like the word control, but healed a little bit more than it was yesterday, and I appreciate that. But what a dream. Like, man, was he pissed. And I guess my father-in-law used to be so frustrated too. When I first met my wife, he was an angry person with his wife, with his daughters, like with the world in general. And as soon as not as soon, but I noticed that when I started being part of their lives, I might as well tell this story. When I first met my wife, she was working at the Tim Hortons, and I started dating her. On the second or third date, I went to their place and had dinner with the family, and her aunt was there. And I remember my wife being like, oh, you know, I want to warn you, like, my aunt sometimes can be vulgar or frustrated, and same with my dad, so please, like, and I'm like, don't worry about it, you know, like, my mom was very frustrated growing up, and it's all good. Like, I was in the love bubble, I don't know, like, the first, you know, I don't know, 4 weeks of meeting a girl, there's always like a bubble of love that is unshakable, and you just think about that girl, and you just want to see that girl no matter what. So I was in that bubble, and when I met them, they were super nice. Like, the entire evening was nice. I remember at one point at dinner, my wife and her little sister, they kind of have this way of talking to each other, which is kind of rude, but it's their way of showing love to each other. They keep teasing each other, but the dad gets mad at that type of shit. Like, he's like, enough, like, because he doesn't understand what's going on. But I could see it that they're teasing each other to the point where, like, it's vulgar, and it's very, and I could see as a parent, like, my God, like, my daughters are so freaking vulgar. Why do they keep doing that? Like, why can't they behave a different way? So that kind of feeling. So I saw that, but that was the most of it. And then when a couple of weeks after that, my wife back then, my girlfriend, she had to move back to Trent University, which is like fucking 4 hours away from Ottawa. I don't remember, but that was her last year, and so I helped her move. We went up there I went with her parents and my girlfriend, and we dropped off everything at Trent. Then I came back with her parents, and then from that day, every Wednesday I would go and have dinner at her parents, even though Stephanie was at university, at Trent University. I still did that. And then every weekend I would go and drive up all the way to Trent, which was in Peterborough, and all the way to Peterborough. So from Ottawa to Peterborough every Friday, and then I would come back on the Sunday so that I could go back to work on Monday, because I had a full-time job while she was in university studying math. And every Wednesday I would go to their place and have dinner with them, and often her little sister would be there. And it was cool because I changed them in a way. I mean, I don't want to throw flowers on my feet or whatever, because I don't feel like I did anything. All I did was, I don't know, I felt right. Her mother was really, anyways, it doesn't matter. But since then, her father became less and less and less angry. And like today, when we went to their place, he's very calm now. Like, he always wants to help, even with his wife. Sometimes, like, there's a little bit of frustration that comes up, but it's stamped like right away. Um, so I really feel proud of him, and he's kind of leading the way. And I thought, he was a frustrated one, and now I realize that now I'm still the one that am frustrated, and he's the one that kind of moved on past frustration. So I want to say, thank you for this dream, showing me that, hey, look at this man. He was able to surpass his anger, and now through this dream, somehow Mother healed me. Or I mean, I don't know if I'm healed, but I'm just saying, like, I can feel happier or less frustrated. So yeah, that's about it. And then, yeah, what a cool dream. So the next dream I wanted to talk to you about was a dream with this guy. He used to be my best friend. So I want to talk to you guys about him. So I met him in college at a point where I was smoking cannabis every day, and I was very depressed because going from high school to college, it felt like I had lost everything, like all of my friends, because everybody was going in this university away or that, or had a job here. So it was very difficult to transition, and it really made me depressed. I was already nervous and depressed as a kid and kind of suicidal, and now it was worse. And the first day that I met him at college, I had started computer programming. He was a guy that had like earrings everywhere, like on his face and in his tongue, and I had never really seen people like that or even interacted with anybody like that growing up in a small town. You never saw kind of people with tons of earrings everywhere and like the big holes in the ears. I don't know how to call that, but so I walk into the first class and I see just nerds, and I'm sorry for labeling, but back in the day I used to be very judgmental towards others, and I'm just putting myself back in my old self, which I would never judge anybody like that anymore, like, but nerds, like, and I was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Because I didn't know what I wanted to do growing up, and I just went in computer programming because my mom said, hey, there's money in there, and you're good in computers, you play games all the time, you're able to build your own computers, you understand what's going on, why don't you go in computer programming? I'm like, all right. And I get in the class, and he's the only one that's really standing out, that's not a nerd or somebody that I'm afraid to speak to. So I go and sit beside him. I'm like, hey, my name's Dom, Dominic, whatever. And he's like, oh, I'm Pat. And since that day, we were just hanging out. Like every day in college, like he was my best friend kind of thing from that point on. And we used to, go out to lunch together all the time. We'd always sit beside each other. We'd help each other study. But then after the first year, he left college because of, I don't know, personal reason. I don't really remember it. So I kind of lost him for a little while. And then I remember getting sober off cannabis because I was so depressed. I didn't know what I wanted anymore, and it was very hard. And I remember going to him because he was not, from my point of view, he was not a cannabis smoker. So I called him up and I went to his place, and I remember crying in front of him saying, hey, I'm sober and it's been, 2 weeks. And I just started sobbing, and he gave me a hug, and it really touched me. Like, he was the first, well, anyways, after high school, he was the first guy friend that I could really open up to. The first friend that I was able to do that with, Stefan, I don't know, like he was doing his own thing, I guess. I remember like after high school we kind of separated a little bit for a while, and he was doing his own thing, and I felt like I had lost all my best friend, like a really close person that I can cry with. Even my cousin Frank, I never really cried in front of him. It was because I was his older cousin. I was always taking care of him, and often he would show his frustration towards his problems, and I would be there for him, and I would always, be there for him. Anyways, so Pat, I remember when I became sober, I went to him and I cried, and it was amazing. And then after that, we kind of separated again, where he had his own thing, his own problems, and he met this girl, Jasmine, and he had a kid that I kind of reconnected with him when his kid was like 1. So time is weird now that I'm thinking back, but I just want to paint you a picture of this guy friend that has a big spot in my heart, but I no longer see him for the reasons I'm going to explain, and I want to go into it because it's affecting me. It's heavy, and it sucks. Anyways, and my dreams are showing me that I'm still attached and I still have traumas. So I met him. He had this kid and his wife. I always had a big attraction, kind of soul attraction with her. The way that we would look at each other's eyes, like she could see in my soul and I could see in her soul, and I could see that she was as fucked as me when it came to this darkness that I have inside of me, and in a good way, right? Because I related to her. And Pat was always a very calm person that wouldn't really talk about his emotions and was very much into the human experience, working on playing guitar or playing basketball or having possessions and just playing the Xbox and just being good at everything, because he put his heart and his soul into the human experience and kind of stayed away from his feelings, where I was very angry and very emotional, so I would always relate with his wife. So me and his wife were close. I felt like we always bonded, and growing up after that, I had jobs and everything. We would be in touch, where when we would have things in common, like if ever I'd be into the Xbox for a while, so I'd go to his place, or working out and smoking weed for a while. We smoked weed, for a long period. But other than that, if we were sober together and we had nothing to say or do, we would say nothing. And I kind of, back then, I couldn't sit with myself. I couldn't be bored, because as soon as I would be bored, it's like sitting with your own feelings, and I hated myself, right? So I always found myself really bored around him if there was nothing to do. And because of that, often I would kind of step away from the relationship, not knowing like why I was doing it, just like, oh, I'm bored, or I thought like, oh, he's boring. But really, now that I think back on it, is I was unable to sit with my own feelings. I was unable to just close my eyes and take a deep breath and be okay with just here and now, right? So anyways, so my relationship with him went like this. But at the same time, as my relationship with him was, back and forth, where I would see him and then not see him, I still was going out with my Stephanie. But my relationship with Stephanie was getting worse and worse and worse and worse. My cousin had passed away now. I was not able to sit with myself. I was angry at God, at life. Like, I didn't even believe in God anymore. Before Frank died, when I met my wife, I was super spiritual. I thought I had it figured out. I was a wizard. I was able to sit with myself, because of my experience in Toronto, where I sat in front of that white wall and I kind of discovered who I really was. And when Frank died, it crumbled everything. So now my relationship with spirituality, with anything, was just fucking going down and down and down and down. And I would be seeing him often to escape my relationship with my wife, but then as soon as we had nothing else in common, I would go back to kind of being with my wife, and we would fight and fight and fight. So anyways, then at one point, his wife and my wife started to become friends. And so we started to hang out as a couple more and more. And they would see how my relationship with my wife was fucked, kind of thing, and we would always fight. So they would always try to help us. But I had a big fear of myself, fear of everything. Even when I would smoke cannabis, I would have like panic attacks. And I used to have panic attacks around them, with them, and they would always be there to help. Then at one point, they introduced us to MDMA. So that was the most amazing night ever. It was New Year's Eve, and him and his wife, me and my wife and another couple, went to that place, that couple's friend's place, whatever, to celebrate. And me and my wife were just having an argument. It was insane. Like, we were pissed, and they said, you know, we've got MDMA, let's all do it together, and I promise you it's gonna help you guys in your relationship. And I was afraid. I mean, cannabis was giving me anxiety attack. I can't imagine a freaking other type of drug, like any type of drug. I was so afraid to take any drug. It'd be acid, any drug. I was scared shitless. So anyways, we do the MDMA. As kind of my wife and I are fighting, they separate us, and he's like, here you go, take this. And then my wife took it with his wife, and then he brought us to the mirror, and I look at your pupils, and they were huge. I'm like, holy shit. And then when I realized that my pupils were huge and that there was an effect happening inside of me, I started to panic like hardcore. I'm like, dude, I'm panicking, like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And he takes me outside, like, come outside with me, and he grabs both of my hands in his hands, and he says, talk to me, what's on your mind, what's on your heart? And I start fucking verbal diarrhea all of my problems. I'm like, I don't like when she does this, and I don't like when, and we're always fighting, and Frank died, and like I start talking about everything. And as I'm talking, I kind of get lost in my vocabulary. And I don't know if you guys ever done M before, but he was looking at me in my soul, and he was giving me all of the space that the entire universe had to offer. Like, he held so much space for me while holding my hands, because as I was speaking, I was just looking in his soul, and he was looking at me, and he allowed me to just empty myself. And I emptied myself fully. And then when I was done, he's like, how do you feel? I'm like, I feel good. And I realized that all of my anger, frustration, sadness, fear was all gone. The only thing that was left was love. Seriously, just love. And I was like, I feel good. And then he brought me inside, sat me in front of my wife. He's like, go now. And then my wife turned to me and looked in my soul, and I looked in her soul, and I knew that she was at the same place as me. And I don't know what her story was when I was talking to Pat. I'm guessing she was talking to Jasmine, and we started to talk. And for once in my entire relationship with her, I heard what she was saying, and I was able to give her the space of the universe while she spoke, while she told me her story, her point of view of what was going on in the relationship. And then I told her my point of view, and she listened. She gave me the space. So MDMA allowed us to give us space, and we talked for, I don't know, it felt forever. And we just talked and talked and talked, and we stayed up all night, and we saw the sunrise from like the 21st floor of that friend's place. And it was the most magical night, like the most magical night, where after my wife and I talked, I remember going to my friends and we talked, and going to the other friends and we talked, and going to Jasmine and we talked, and it was so healing, so transformative. The next day, went to bed, and we only slept like 4 hours, woke up so tired, and I realized that my anxiety was gone, all of it. My panic attacks were gone. I was able to smoke weed like crazy, like a fucking full joint to myself, and I was okay. Like, I was okay with myself for the first time in my life. Maybe it was insane. And then that happened. And then the next weekend, we did it again. And it was so healing again. And then the next weekend, we did it again. And then the next weekend or whatever, we kept doing it every weekend. And by the way, never do that. We didn't realize on what it can do to your brain. And I don't know if it fucked anything up. I don't think so. But Jasmine and Pat were kind of in financial trouble, and because of everything, we decided to invite them to our place, to live at our place until they get back on their feet, so that they could afford, whatever they needed to afford. And when that happened, we continued doing M every weekend until it got to a point where we were doing M for the pleasure of it, not for healing. And it started to get a toll, like to put a toll on everybody. We got more and more tired. We almost got sick of each other, and the relationship kind of soured on all front. The relationship between me and my wife, between me and Pat, between me and Jasmine, and between my wife and Jasmine, and it just started to get more and more sour. And we stopped doing M, and Pat and I went back into cannabis hardcore. But now the anxiety attacks were gone. My spirituality was kind of up, but I was kind of trying to force it on everybody because I was still unsure, and I still hadn't healed my issues with Frank. Even though I had healed like many issues in general, they kind of all came back slowly and surely. And when they were able to get financially ready to get out, we broke it off, like even as friends, because it was too much what we had lived while they were living at our place, I think for a year, I don't know, for a while. And when that happened, again, I lost all of my friends. Like Pat was the only friend that I had at that time. And when they separated from us and they got their own apartment, we just stopped. For whatever reasons, this and that. I don't want to go in details, but we just stopped being friends. And that was hard. And then, years pass, and that's where I go to Peru. And then when I came back from Peru, I decided to be sober because, it was the beginning of my journey with you guys, like the first few months. And I was still like having a lot of troubles handling and integrating what I had learned in Peru. But I was getting better, I was crying every night. I was doing the sapo breathing and the ceremonies with cannabis, but like the proper way. Now that I knew that plant medicine and spirits existed, and I went all in, I just jumped full in, like fucking God exists. But I still didn't believe it. I was kind of forcing it still. Then at one point, Sam was really telling me about sobriety, and it seemed really important for me to try to be sober, because I thought maybe it's the cannabis that's bringing me down, and because I was still going through the super dark night of the soul, where you've got all of the wisdom of spirituality, but the rewards are not yet there, because you're still feeling all of the, well, for me, the frustration of life, of my traumas, of everything. And then I get sober, and 2 weeks after my sobriety, it was the hardest 2 weeks. Like, it was super hard. This friend, Pat, hits me up. I don't remember how, but he hits me up, and he's like, I wouldn't mind seeing you again. And I'm like, man, it feels so appropriate that you're talking to me at that time. And I ask him, are you sober? He's like, no. And I'm like, can I show you the proper way, again, my arrogance, to smoke cannabis and to be silent mind, because I was really into silent mind at this point and not thinking about the future or the past. And I knew that he was, from talking to him, I knew that he was going through emotional angst. He had, he got addicted to pain pills for a while because of an accident that he had, and his anxiety was through the roof. And so anyways, I go and I bring him to my place, and it had been a while now since I'd seen him, and because I was here and now and I was practicing shame resilience, I just fucking went all in, and I showed him my true self, my true spiritual fucking post ayahuasca self. And I bring him downstairs and I do a ceremony with him. I smoke, and I do this thing where, like, let's not talk, let's just let the cannabis kind of do everything. And I go get him, we stay quiet, and the entire time in the car, get here, I write my intention in the book, and I make him write his intention, do the sage thing with him, go outside, smoke cannabis, bring him inside. But of course, for me, cannabis is not the same anymore. It's like post ayahuasca, and when you do ayahuasca and then you do cannabis after, it just, you can go into sapo land so easily. So I bring him downstairs and I start doing the Wim Hof breathing with him, the sapo breathing, and I show him, my way of dealing with frustration, and I start breathing, and I start breathing, and I start hitting the pillow, and then I show him how to do it as well, and he does it, and then at one point he cried, like a tear went down his face, like as if cannabis, mother, and everything was doing something inside of him through the sapo breathing exercise that we were doing. And I thought at that moment, like, yes, I found my best friend again, like my ultimate fucking best friend. Yes. And I could see him as a god, like he looked like a god to me. His beard was super long, and it's as if like he had all of the knowledge of what I was showing him. He had it already inside of him. But I was so needy to have a friend that I didn't realize what was happening. You know, he was just agreeing with all that I was saying, because yes, a part of him knew that what I was saying was true, I guess. But at the same time, I was kind of telling him, like, are you with me? Do you want to be silent mind with me? Do you want to do these cannabis ceremony with me and do the breathing and go in and do maybe mushroom? Because he had never done mushrooms. Well, that's not true. Anyways, but mushrooms in a ceremonial way, right? And he's like, yes, man, I'm all in. Like, I could see a twinkle, because he wanted a friend as well, I'm guessing. I'm guessing that he didn't have it. Like, we were in a similar situation. And so then I started doing that with him. Like, every weekend I would call him up. We'd come and do a ceremony, and then it started to be more often, where I'd call him up like almost every night. I'd go pick him up, bring him here, do a cannabis ceremony. And then at one point he's like, hey, let's do mushrooms together. Do you want to? And he's like, I want to get, and he's one of these guys that he's all in on everything, right? He's strong, not afraid to go head first into doing backflips, to like fucking, he says, let's do penis envy together. And I'm like, all right, are you sure? That's insane. And he's like, yeah, I want, like, all in. And we do 3.5 grams. And before the ceremony, we did a ceremony where we emptied our stomach, where we drank like 2 liters of water, and then you puke it in a bucket. It didn't go really well, but he was all in. He was like, he wanted to do it the right way, the same way as we did in ayahuasca, where when you do combo, you drink a lot of water and then you puke it. So we did that, and then we do the mushrooms, and he fucking like goes, like he, like ego death, like a pure ego death. And I just go back to my purging of crying and feeling decay, anger, frustration, and like pure pain, physical pain. Like, I couldn't even get up. We were stuck on the floor, both of us. We were on the floor. We couldn't get up, like as if the penis envy mushroom was just pushing us down. And he went like, I never had an ego death myself, but he left his body, came back, and as he was coming back, it's like, holy fuck, like he was having a hard time, but I didn't realize it, because he was all over the place. Like, he was throwing himself like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. At one point, our wives came downstairs to kind of support us, but she had to go back to her place because it was getting late, and I was crying. I was like, please don't leave us, please. Like, I was going through such a hard time. It was the hardest fucking ceremony ever. Like, it was so heavy and so dark and we had put like the throat singing from the Tibetan monk, so it was like so profoundly shamanic, crazy experience. And at one point I get out and I managed to start walking, like after, whatever hours, middle of the night, after kind of the ceremony, and he's sleeping. He's finally calmed down, and he's on the mattress downstairs. And I go outside, and I have my experience with cannabis, where she showed me that, I might as well talk about it. I love that experience. I go outside, and at this point, like, now I'm scared because the mushroom kicked my ass so fucking hardcore. I could see decay everywhere, and I couldn't get up, and I was just crying, and it was fucked up. So I go outside, and smoke a joint, and I didn't want to smoke the joint because I was still feeling high on the mushroom, but at least I could move, and I didn't want to go back to that crazy place. So as soon as I smoked, the tree in front of me, it was kind of misty outside. Eyes show up everywhere on the trees in front of me. There's only one tree, it's a hazelnut tree, and cannabis starts talking to me through the tree, and she's like, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, holy shit. Like, and I start having a conversation with her, just like, thank you for being there for me. Like, I'm glad that you didn't bring me back to this chaotic place that I was fucking 30 minutes ago, kind of thing. And then I start talking to her about, like, yo, I'm so confused about you. Like, every time that I smoke, I feel this pain in my throat, and I feel like you're gonna give me throat cancer, and I hate this. Like, I'm so confused about you. Like, I hate what I'm going through right now. It's dark, it's crazy, but yes, I finally met Pat, but still I'm not happy. I'm so frustrated all the time. I can't sit still. I can't play with my children. I am always angry at my wife, and I'm always feeling like I'm running away, and you're the only thing that I truly fucking love in this life, and you're gonna fucking kill me with throat cancer. And she's like, listen, okay, look at how much you love me, and look at the issues that is in front of you about the throat cancer. Just look at both. And the mushroom allowed me to, like, kind of put both in a ball, like, so I could see all of the love that I had for cannabis in one spot. And then I saw all of my pain, frustration, anger, fear, like so much fucking fear in a ball of me getting throat cancer. And then she's like, okay, now that you see both, put them together and don't use your mind, okay? Because I was really into silent mind, and she was reaffirming, don't use all your mind, just see the feelings, and then you're gonna get an answer at the end, okay? But just look at them together. So then I merge both of these balls together, and they start fighting, like fighting. And when that happened, the feeling was so extreme that I jumped back in my awareness. Like, I literally jumped back, and I separated myself from these feelings, these two feelings, my love for cannabis and all of my fears and my frustration, and I saw them fight outside of my awareness. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, they're no longer inside of me, because it scared me so much when they started to fight, and they were fighting now in front of me, outside of me. And when that happened and I realized that they were outside of me, there's an experience that came over me, like almost as if I was gonna pass out. And I realized what was happening, because with Sapo, I knew now, like, when you get an experience like that where you feel like you're gonna pass out because it's so extreme, I started to breathe right away. I started to do the Sapo breathing, like and automatically I put my hand on my throat where it was hurting. Like, it did that automatically, like my body went on autopilot. And I love having an experience like that's the Sapo experience. Like, you just let the feeling go, and you let your body go, and you just get out of the way. Like, basically you get out of the way. You become an observer of what the fuck is happening. My hand went to my throat, and I was breathing hard. And then in my awareness, there's a big image of me. Like, it's weird. Like, I closed my eyes. I don't even know. My eyes were open or closed. But there's an image, like a vision that showed up, and it was everything. Because when you go through an experience, it becomes your entire world. You can't think of anything else, because the feelings are so extreme that it's either you die from them and you pass out, or you see them and you allow them to go and be, and you just breathe. Like, do your best to just breathe. And because of my Wim Hof breathing technique, it's like almost a gift that I was given, that I call the Sapo breathing, and I just start breathing. And I see this vision of me dying in a grassy field, like, and it's dark, and I noticed that the grass is it's its own thing. Like, every blade of grass was like an energy, a spirit that was screaming in agony, and the entire field was screaming in agony, dying with me, and everything was dying now around me. Like, everything was screaming in agony in pure darkness, and I was in this grassy field, and I knew that it was mother and the cannabis being one, kind of telling me, it's okay, man, fucking fight in this grassy field for the idea that you're gonna die. Like, fight as much as you want. And I remember through my breathing, I was fighting and I was crying and I was like, I'm gonna die and everything is dying around me. Look at this misery that life is. And we were all screaming and fighting, and I was like a child, like a child, like fighting. Like, even now I'm trying to move, like as if I'm reliving that experience. And I'm fighting in that grassy field, and I'm dying. And the more that I fight, the more that I'm dying. And then at one point I let go. I'm like, okay, I'm done fighting. Like, I don't have any more energy. Like the penis heavy had kicked my ass so much that I was out of energy. I'm like, okay, I'm dying. And I let myself die. And I had my hand on my throat where I was hurting, and I died of throat cancer in that vision. And I allowed it, because I was done fighting. I had no more energy to fight. And then I died. And as soon as I died, everything around me exploded in color. Everything became like fucking rainbows and sunshine and lollipops. And that crying and that scream that everything was doing, even me, turned into a song, as if in unison everybody was singing. Like, the cries became a song, and we all died together. Everything that was around me, my awareness, my everything, the car, the tree, everything that was in my awareness died with me, and now was singing a song. And they were all individual voices. Like, and then when that happened, I came back to life. I came back to my chair where I was with my joint in my head, my hand, and I opened my eyes, and now not only the tree was talking to me, but everything was talking to me. The car, the grass, my awareness, my archetypes, everything was like, hey, he sees us. And like, look, we all died together, and we're still here. Like, we're gonna do this dance over and over again. You died for the first time. How does it feel? And I was so in shock. I was just like, my mouth was wide open, like, what? Like a cartoon, like, and it was funny, because there was some voice that was like, hey, he sees us. And then there was other voice that was like, finally, this motherfucker thought that he was the only thing in this world, and now he realizes that we're all a part of him, and he needs us as much as we need him. And like, finally, like, as if like fucking finally. And some voice was like, yeah, no big deal. Like, I've seen this a million times over. Like, the first time that somebody dies and awakens to us, like, yeah, no big deal. But some of them were like, welcome, I'm so happy. And then the guys that were angry at me for not realizing it sooner, I was getting defended by the other voice, where it's like, come on, give him a break. Like, you've been there before too. Like, it's okay, buddy. My cat is purging. It feels appropriate. But anyways, they were all there for me. And then it was insane. Like, I stayed there like in pure shock and amazement at hearing all of these voices everywhere talking to me. And it was my first, I call it my first ego death, because I allowed myself to die. But it's not like I went to see God. It's just like I had a vision, I had an experience with the cannabis and the mushroom that showed me that everything is alive around you, and it has a voice. And I'm glad that I'm talking about it. Like, I don't talk to them enough, seriously. Like, I'm sorry, to tell you the truth. Like, I feel shitty that it's like the paradox of forgetting is so strong. Like, you forget the beautiful lessons that you experience, and then you go to the next thing in your life, the next thing, until those lessons come back and kind of kick you in the face, saying, hey, we're still here. And I know that, and I'm sorry. I've been back into as if I'm the only thing that matters, even though not, because I feel like I'm here to heal all of the traumas of my ancestors. So it's not for me anymore, it's for everything. but I still feel like when I'm really suffering and it's dark, that I go inwards instead of outwards to you, beautiful everything, this wall, this pillow. Anyways, and I go back inside after having this experience, and it's beautiful, and my Pat comes up and he's like, dude, it was way too much. And I'm like, yeah, it was insane, right? And he's like, yeah, I don't think that was a good idea. Like, I could see like something was broken and he was still not at peace. And I noticed that as well. If you guys do an experience with the mushroom, don't try to wrap your head of what the fuck just happened the night of. Just know that if you're feeling shitty, it's fine. Feel shitty, sit with those feelings, just go to bed. Don't think, let it go. And then the next day, that's where the magic kind of happens. And the following week, the following 2 weeks, you know, the magic happens where you start getting the downloads and you start processing what just happened. As traumatic as it was, like, it was traumatic for him and it was traumatic for me, you still feel empty, like your gas is out. You've used so much energy in that ceremony that you just let it be, go to sleep, and you'll get your downloads the next day. So he's like, man, that was way too much. I'm like, yeah. I bring him back to his place, and then the next day he's like, I feel good, like. And then from that point on, I went back to doing that old way of being with that guy, with Pat, of being extreme kind of thing. The next weekend, or 2 weekend after, because I always give it 2 weekends to release, I do another ceremony with him, but it was smaller. And during that ceremony, I noticed that I start kind of feeling annoyed of him because he's not going through his feelings. He wants to do mushrooms for the pleasure of it, and he's not wanting to do it like in a spiritual, ceremonial way. Even the cannabis, we're going more and more away from writing our intentions, doing sage. We were just smoking to smoke to have fun, and I didn't want that. I wanted to treat the medicine with such respect, but anyways, so I could feel something blooming in my heart of annoyance, but I was not dealing with it, and I was not brave and strong enough to do something about it or to mention it, because I was so afraid to lose him as a friend that there was like a paradox going, and there was like a lot of negativity that was starting to bloom in my heart. Well, one day we do a mushroom ceremony, and it was at the beginning of COVID, and COVID was scaring the fuck out of me because, again, I had no courage. I was afraid to lose him. I was afraid still. I was angry. I was still going through the dark night of the soul. And we decided to go walk in the area where I live, and he brought his bong, and he was smoking the bong right there in the public, and it was, or was it his bong? But anyways, and I was starting to feel annoyed because, man, I live here. Like, I don't want to look like an idiot. And the shame was starting to build up. And then I knew that it was the beginning of COVID, so I didn't know how crazy it was. And everybody was afraid. And everybody was kind of walking. If you would see kind of a pack of people, I would go around them. I didn't want to go through them. I didn't want to go near people. And he was kind of anti-COVID. You know, like, there was a lot of people that were like, fuck this stupid virus, it's not even real. And we were high on mushroom, and again, I was feeling this negativity inside of me, but he was doing good. Like, he was super happy. And we get to a point where there's a group of kids, and I tell him, hey, can we cross the street? Like, I don't feel comfortable to going through. And he got annoyed because of this COVID thing. Like, he had some darkness, you know, anti-COVID darkness inside of him, I guess. And he's like, well, if you want to cross, you cross. And when that happened, he's like, in a rude way almost, like, if you want to cross, you cross. But not really. He was being confident, right? He was just telling me, like, hey, I'm not afraid of this COVID bullshit. You do you, and I'm gonna do me. But because I was afraid, and I wanted a partner because I really wanted a partner to go through my negativity, my darkness, my sadness, my fear with, as if I would have like a soldier helping me, because it was so hard to trip alone on the mushroom, or even like I wanted to go deeper in my healing with the mushrooms, but it was kicking my ass all the time if I would do it alone. So when I would do it with him, I thought, anyways, I wanted a partner. And when he did that, and I'm like, come on, man, please cross the road with me. I'm afraid. I need you, and blah blah. And he's like, no, like you. And he went through the group of kids, and I went around. And when that happened, I'm like, dude, come on, can we talk about this? Like, I'm afraid now. Like, we're gonna be going back home, and I don't know this COVID thing. I need to talk to you about it. I want a partner in this. I need you. And he's like, dude, like, I'm high. I don't want to talk about this. Like, fuck off. Like, I just want to enjoy myself. No. And I didn't let it go. I was like, dude, please, we need to talk about it. And he's like, what? Like, I feel afraid now. You just went through those kids, and I feel like you're not there supporting me or supporting my wife. What if you have COVID right now, and we go back home, and you give it to my children and my wife, and I don't know what's going to happen. And when I said that, I kind of triggered, because I kind of told him, like, hey, you're not protecting me or my wife anymore. And that triggered him, basically. And he's like, dude, fuck off. Like, I'm just trying to have a good time here, and you're bumming me out, and blah, blah. And I didn't let it go. I was like, dude, I need your help. I need you. Please, let's go through your feelings. Like, if you're frustrated, let's talk about it. Like, let's do it together. I'm there. And he's like, fuck off. No, stop. I don't want to talk about it. Stop. And I just didn't let it go. And then at one point, he was screaming at me, dude, like, I can't handle this right now. I'm high on mushroom. Please, fuck off. I don't want to talk about this. Like, I kept pushing the issue. And I didn't stop. And then at one point, he fucking ran. And he was crying, like he was crying, and he ran away. And I was like, fuck. Because at one point I started to be really harsh, like, dude, I want a partner in this. Come on, we can do this. Grow some balls, like, breathe. We got this. Like, fucking, you got this. You're strong, and blah, blah. And I was screaming at him. And it was like, and it didn't help. We just went fucking dark. And he started to run, and I was so disappointed. And I felt when I was doing that too, like as if Mother was on my side saying, you're doing the right thing, like you need to continue, like, showing your strength and your courage. But I was destroying him. Like, he was on mushroom, like, and he was new to the mushroom, and he was crying, and he was like, fuck off. I don't want to, like, I was not giving him the space that he needed to process what the fuck he was going through because of what I was putting on him. Like, he didn't ask for this, right? And he was the brave one. Like, he was not afraid of COVID. He was doing the right thing. And like, anyways, he screams and he leaves. And I couldn't run. I was high on mushroom too. And I get to my place, and we kind of get to our place at the same time. Even though he was running, he got lost. And he called my wife, and he was crying, and he was like all confused, and he was going through. It's as if I had put like all the darkness in the world inside of him, and I left him, and I couldn't help him because I wanted to deal with it, with this darkness instead of running away from it. And he ran. And then we got to our place, and I couldn't, I couldn't let it go. I was like, and he went downstairs in the basement, and he was going through his own thing. And at one point he screamed to try to let it go. And yeah, it was horrible. Like, what a horrible experience. And I lost him after that as a friend. Like, we couldn't trip anymore. I lost him as a friend. Like, he went back to his life, and I went back to mine. And I didn't see him since. And I feel not bad and bad at the same time. Like, to give space to people when they're going through their shit, fucking give space. But if you're tripping with somebody that's weak as well, you gotta be careful with that. Like, just a warning, I was fucking weak. What I did to him was pure weakness, because I was afraid of so much. And again, I was going through a hard time. Again, I'm not defending, I'm just telling this story to get up to this dream that I had. So I dreamed that me and my wife needed a babysitter, and for whatever reason I called them, Jasmine and Pat, to babysit, and they said yes. And me and my wife went, and we did our thing, and we were kind of in a building, and we saw this orange cat that was kind of leading us, and it felt like a video game. Like, he was leading us to this spot, and it's like, is that what we need to do? And then he led us to a door, and it's like, do you want to go outside, or am I supposed to let you outside? As if he was a guide almost. And I opened the door. Oh, that's cool. because I have an orange cat that lives with me, and he is somewhat of a guide when it comes to God. Anyways, but it seemed like a female cat. So I opened the door, and then Pat and Jasmine were there, and we were now inside their apartment, and my children were nowhere to be seen, but it was not important. Pat and Jasmine they love animals. They love animals, so they always have a ton of animals at their place. So I start dreaming like we're looking at their cats, doing this and that, and their animals, and it's awkward because my wife, she lost her friend too when we separated from Jasmine. They were best friends. It was so cool to see them together. They would always laugh. So she lost as much as I lost at that time. And when I did this thing with Pat, she lost Jasmine again, because of me, and well, because of what happened. And in that dream, it was awkward, but it was cool, but it was awkward, and we kind of just left it at that. And then at one point, Pat and I needed to leave. I don't know why, but he got into my SUV, and I started to drive. And the drive was kind of awkward. I felt like I needed to be very careful where I was driving. And as I was driving, and that's another thing about dreams that are so weird, I started to go up and up and up as if my seat was going super high, and I was still driving my car, but now I was like a kilometer high in the sky, and I was still driving this tiny little car, and I needed to manage, and I was afraid because I was so high, and I was so high that I couldn't, like, it was scary, as if the car would tip. And then I woke up, and it made me realize on how much I still have trauma with him. And this dream showed me how uncomfortable I was and how high in the air when driving with him alone in a car, how scary it was for me to even think about him, or even like if I would have a relationship with him in the future. And it showed me like how it's not stable. So I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to share this. I know, that's it for my dream. Thank you for listening. That was super healing, I guess. I needed to go through it. I'm still digesting, integrating all of this. And I love you guys with all my heart. Monkey and Frank for life. And I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.